What's up guys, this is Ultimate iDevice Vids, and today in this video we're going to be doing a massive speed test comparison between every iPhone generation that's currently supported by the latest iOS version, being iOS 15. And we're going to be sticking to the base model phone from each generation, as including the Pro, Plus, and SE models would just be a little bit too chaotic for this video. And before we get started, I want to show you guys that all of these iPhones are running at their peak performance capability, and also of course, they're all running the latest version of iOS 15 as of recording this video. And let's kick things off with some app launching tests. So we're going to launch some stock applications and some App Store applications as well. So we'll start off with some of the stock applications. And of course, all these applications are very light, nothing CPU intensive at all. So as you can see, all the devices perform very well opening up these very simple apps, with just a split-second disadvantage on some of the oldest devices, but really nothing that you'd ever notice in day-to-day life. And this is to be expected with applications that are so lightweight and simple. And we'll launch a few more of these stock apps before moving on to some of the App Store apps. So we're going to go into the Podcasts application. Loads up quick on all of them. We'll head on over to the App Store next, and we'll head on over to Notes. And lastly, we're going to load up Safari here on all of these devices. And once again, same result here as well. And moving on to some App Store applications, we'll start off with some of the lighter applications here, like Instagram. And with these applications, there is a slightly more noticeable difference between the performance of the newer devices in comparison to the older devices, but it's still within the range of a split second to maximum like 2 or 3 seconds difference for, again, these lighter applications. So nothing that you'd really ever notice once again in day-to-day life, which is great to see. I think all of the current iOS 15 supported iPhones run quite well, certainly in comparison to the way that older iPhones used to respond on newer software updates. I just think currently, with where we're at right now, with the current set of supported devices, I think they all run quite well, again, running the latest iOS version. And as we start to get into some slightly heavier applications, some slightly heavier games, again, that difference between the older devices and the newer devices does widen a little bit more. Of course, the more CPU intensive the application or task you're doing is, again, the more that difference is going to show. But that being said, again, it's still a very, very minor difference in the grand scheme of things, which is always a point that I like to make in these videos. Of course, when you're comparing a bunch of devices side by side like this, you're going to notice the difference. But in day-to-day life, just going about your business, the differences are going to be very difficult to perceive. And getting into some of the much heavier game applications, in terms of launch time, once again, just the gap does widen even more between the older and the newer devices. But even with some of the older devices delaying a little bit, they all handle every task perfectly fine. And we'll conclude by launching Asphalt 9. This is an application that notoriously takes a very long time to load, especially on older devices. And no surprise here, the progression is just down the line of generations, once again, from newest to oldest. Next, we're going to move on to some consecutive app launching tests. So what we're going to do is we're going to launch the same set of applications on all of these devices, and we're going to show each device doing this side by side. First, I'm going to do this with a set of stock applications, and second, I'm going to do this with a set of App Store applications. So starting off with the set of stock applications here, as you can see here, all devices are just flying through all of these apps. Once again, as to be expected, they're all very lightweight, simple applications for the most part, and the 4 latest generations basically just being completely neck and neck for the most part throughout this. And in terms of the 3 older generation devices, same thing there too. They're basically neck and neck with each other, more or less the same experience. Of course, the default simple applications that Apple designed for every iPhone to use straight out of the box. So all working great. Again, no complaints whatsoever here. And with the newer iPhones being all the way through this set of apps, we'll just wrap things up by finishing up on a few of the older models. And even though all these applications are super light, I still wanted to go back and check in on RAM management. So just going back into each application and making sure that the apps all remained open even after going through all of them. And no surprise, every single device here was able to keep all these apps open in the background when checking. And after clearing all of the app switchers on these iPhones, we're going to do the same thing with a set of App Store applications. So kicking things off here, no surprise, of course, the newer devices just fly through these applications without any issue. But the older iPhones do quite well with this as well. You know, they're all getting into and getting out of these applications in a very fast fashion. Again, just a second or two of a delay, which again, you're not going to notice for the most part in day-to-day life. It's really nice to see that Apple is not only just supporting the latest iOS updates on, a variety of older iPhones, but also in this case, as you can see, all devices devices performing quite well. Even devices that are, 5, 6 years old, like the iPhone 6S and iPhone 7 in this case. I mean, in terms of performance, the average person is not going to have any issue with any of these devices. And of course, just like earlier, once we start to get into some of the slightly heavier applications, there again, that difference definitely starts to show a little bit more. The newer iPhones start to pull a little bit noticeably ahead of the older ones, but they're all getting the job done at the end of the day. And you can see with applications like Minecraft, even more so with apps like PUBG and Asphalt 9, that's where you're going to see the biggest difference on devices like the iPhone 6S and iPhone 7. So we're just going to quickly speed through the remainder of the consecutive app launching test for the App Store apps here. And directly following doing this test, I just wanted to quickly check in on the RAM management for this test as well. So once again, going back into all of the applications and seeing which ones were kept open in the background or closed. So in terms of the lighter applications from the beginning of the test, most of those applications on all of these devices remained open when I checked in, which I was happy to see about. And when we start to get into some of these slightly heavier applications towards the middle and end of the test, the latest generations of iPhones, as to be expected, kept everything open, as of course the newest iPhones have more RAM in them considerably than the older ones, not to mention all the new processing power, of course, while basically all of the slightly heavier applications and games from the second portion of the test on the older devices were all closed when I checked in on them. So no real surprise here. Of course, the top of the line latest generation iPhones have the most RAM, the best processing power, so of course they're going to do better in regards to RAM management. But in the grand scheme of things, once again, I think all of them did quite well. And next, I want to run a biometrics test. So Face ID for the latest 4 generations, and for the 3 older generations, Touch ID. And as you can see here, across the board on all of these devices, both unlocking mechanisms were very fast. And real quick, I just want to load a few web pages in Safari, and it's very important that you keep in mind that, of course, tests like this largely depend on the internet connection that you're using, so results will certainly vary with this. But with all these devices connected to the very same Wi-Fi network, as you can see here, all of them are performing quite well. Absolutely blazing fast web page load times, as you can see, for average websites, of course, like Google and Apple.com here. Of course, your web browsing experience also largely depends on, how complex and heavy the type of web pages you're loading are. And in terms of scrolling speed, just on Apple.com here, as you can see, very fast, very smooth on all these devices. Of course, that could depend on, again, the type of web page that you're scrolling, but no complaints at all with web browsing on any of these devices. And lastly, let's run a few benchmark tests. So we're going to start off with Geekbench, and as to be expected here, just that steady progression with each newer generation scoring a little better than the previous generation. And now we'll move on to the Antutu test, and same thing here, once again, with just that steady progression in the numbers. Again, just with each new generation doing a little bit better. But there you guys have it. That's every iPhone that's currently supported by the latest iOS version, again being iOS 15 right now, compared in a speed test. I'd say all these devices performed incredibly well in this test. If you guys are using any of these iPhones, let me know down below in the comments section how the speed and performance has been for you. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.